Welcome to episode 17 of the Brainy Business, Understanding the Psychology of Why People Buy. This episode is taking framing one step further to unlock the power of numbers. I know I'm ready. Let's get to it.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. Today's going to be a little break from the Behavioral Economics Foundation's episodes. We've had quite a few in a row now, and we're going to dig a little deeper into framing so we can unlock the power of numbers. And there are several other concepts I'm going to reference throughout the episode, some of which have already had Foundations episodes, and some were really setting the stage for episodes to come to get you excited about some more Foundations. I'm going to get into some of my most frequently asked questions in today's episodes, including my thoughts on ending prices in 99 or 97, or something more unique, and when to use each type of number to have the biggest impact. You are not going to want to miss a minute of this episode. But before we dig in, I need to share some special updates and shoutouts. I know I mentioned it last week, but it wasn't 100% ready to go, so I barely touched on it. So today I want to just take a second to say the new website is live and it's awesome. It showcases my new speaker video, and it's my favorite thing of the moment. If you have not checked it out, please do, and let me know what you think. In case you don't know, the website is thebrainybusiness.com. This project has been many months in the making, actually started before the podcast even started, before we launched, and it has exceeded my expectations. I'm so happy with it. I would love to hear your feedback and what your thoughts are too on both the video, the speaker video, and the website itself. So one more time, thank you to Justin and the whole team at 52 Card Media. Thank you to Jesse with Cinematic Syndicate and Jennifer of Jennifer Findley Portraits for all you did to make this possible. You made Brain and I look good in the photos, the video, and the website. It's all thanks to the hard work of all of you. So thank you so, so much. Another update that was kicked off by the completion of that speaker reel video is that the Brainy Business has transitioned to a new YouTube channel. This one uses the correct email address instead of the old one. I had issues with the old brand and not being able to convert off YouTube, so I had to abandon my channel, which was a little bit sad, but I'm really excited about the new one. So if you were a subscriber on the old channel, or even if you weren't, please take a second and subscribe to the new one. There is a link in the show notes for you. And since not everyone is a podcast junkie, now, officially, all of the episodes are available in their complete form, full episodes. Every episode, starting from one of the Brainy Business Podcast, are on YouTube, which is very exciting. So if you know anyone who would find the information on this podcast useful, but isn't into the podcast scene, consider sharing those YouTube versions with them. The links are available within the channel itself, or I'll be sharing them all over social media, where you can always find me as The Brainy Biz. That's B-I-Z instead of the full word of business like you get on the website. And I look forward to connecting with you there. Speaking of social media, that is where the listener shout outs come from today. As you all know, I'm pretty new to the podcast game. The show started back at the beginning of July, so I'm still very excited when people reach out to me. As a side note, I know myself well enough to say I'm pretty sure I'm going to geek out and get all giddy for a long time while this happens. So keep those comments and reach outs coming. I love them. My husband gets to hear my recaps all the time where I say things like, oh my gosh, guess what? I got an email from a listener and... sorry, honey. So the new and exciting thing that happened this week was 2 different people reached out via Instagram direct messages within just a couple hours of each other. Both people I had never met before. First is from Katie Goulette Design Co., who mentioned episode 11 in her story. It looks like she stopped partway through the episode to screenshot and share on her story with a note that reads, if you like psychology and why we do what we do, you'll love this podcast. My conversion-loving heart loves this. Thank you, Katie. I'm so glad you liked the episode and the podcast in general. And thank you for taking the time to share it in your Insta story. It's just super cool, really, really exciting for me. So thank you for doing that. And I know some other people have done that in the past as well, including Natalie Ekdahl of BizChicks. Thank you, everyone, for all your shares. It means a lot, so much to me. I have linked to Katie's profile in the show notes as well as to BizChicks, so you can go check them out. And 2 hours after Katie's share, I got a direct message from Bare Feet Guy India. He let me know his name is Sagar. I apologize. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. And he told me he is a fitness professional in India. He said, I listen to your podcasts regularly / repeatedly. Every time I listen to the same episode 4 is my favorite, I learn something new. It's really helping me to change the way I look at business. Look forward to more amazing content. Wow, how cool is that? First, thank you for listening and thank you for letting me know you like the show. While there have been 111 downloads from India, you are the first person to reach out. So thank you for that. Of the now 65 countries with downloads, and we're well over 5,500 now, India is the 5th most popular. The rest of the top 5, in case you're interested, are Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and of course, the US to top it all off. Thank you to everyone for listening, sharing, subscribing, commenting, rating, leaving reviews. It means so much to me, and I appreciate you all. Thank you. Oh, the other cool thing is that Sagar told me he found the Brainy Business podcast because it showed up in the suggestions. Awesome. Thanks again. I have, of course, linked to his Instagram in the show notes as well. Speaking of show notes, in case you aren't familiar, I have a full list of links and detailed show notes of each episode on the website or within the podcast app you're listening to. It makes it super easy for you to find things or look things up that I've referenced. Like in the note above, he referenced episode 4, questions or answers. So there's a link to that in the show notes in case you want to go back and listen for what all the hype is about. While I do not mention every time something is linked because it would get really repetitive, just know that if you hear me say something that makes you think, I should look that up, check the show notes first because it is probably already linked there for you, ready to go. Again, you can find the show notes within the podcast app you're listening to or by visiting thebrainybusiness.com/17 because this is episode 17. And again, that's 17, not spelling out the word. Okay, I think that's it. Let's talk about how to unlock the secrets of numbers in your business. Last week was all about the concept of framing. I'm going to take it a step further today to really dig into framing with numbers and why that's important. But first, I'm going to give a little refresher for anybody that's new, and I would recommend going back and listening to that episode after this one if you haven't listened to it already. But here's a little refresher on framing and how it works. Essentially, the way you say something is often more important than what you're actually saying. This ties back to loss aversion, which was the focus of episode 9, where framing something as a loss means someone is twice as likely to take action than when the exact same thing is framed as a gain. And it doesn't mean you need to use different statistics to get the point across. Simply flipping it around can have a big impact. A common example I give on this is if you were shopping for yogurt or ground beef or turkey, you're more likely to buy it when it's listed as 90% fat-free than if it's listed at 10% fat. Obviously, it's two sides of the same statistical coin, saying the same thing, but the subconscious brain focuses on and takes action very differently from one presentation to the next. So, what does this mean for your business? As I mentioned at the top of the episode, I get asked about pricing strategy a lot, which makes sense considering this podcast is called The Brainy Business, Understanding the Psychology of Why People Buy. Pricing gets into that. Hopefully, you've already listened to the very popular episode 5, The Truth About Pricing, which was the first episode in the It's Not About the Cookie series. I didn't get into this too much on that episode because, as I say there, pricing is not about the price or what you're selling. All the things leading up to the price matter more than the number itself. Still, because this is one of the most common questions I get asked, I want to be able to have something to reference back to for people and make it really easy to answer this question. And so you can share the information and that I can let you know my stance on this. I tend to get asked this question about pricing in 3 different ways. And I'm going to go ahead and line them all out for you and then give you my answer to each one. The first question that I get asked a lot is it really better to end something in 99 than rounding up to the nearest dollar or 100 or 1,000 or whatever? The next question is, should my prices end in 99 or 97? And finally, should I have a random but interesting number instead, like $456.78? Okay, I'm going to break it down one by one. I'm going to answer each of these questions for you that have probably been burning in your brain because, like I said, I get asked them all the time. Okay, first, in general, on the 99 versus the full dollar question, it's better to round down. However, the main reason this works is because you're bringing down the first number in a whole digit. Meaning, 599 looks better than 600 because the first digit is now a 5 instead of a 6. And there's some psychology behind our lazy brains not making it all the way to the end of the number. So even though 599 is much closer to 600, your brain kind of stops after that 5 and assumes it's in the $500 realm versus in the $600 realm. This tends to have less impact when you get into middle numbers dropping down. So if instead of having a price be $2,500, you were to bring it down to $2,499, it's not going to have as much of an effect as the $600 to $599 because the 4, which is kind of wedged between a bunch of numbers there, is what's coming down. And you're still starting with a $2,000 front price point. It can still be better to bump down, but it might not pack quite as much of a punch when it's in the middle of a number like that. However, consistency is key. So if you have your prices all listed out and you're explaining them to someone or you have them on a site and you list them like one on top of the next and you were to say, It's $3.99, $4.99, $9.99, and $2,500. It's just weird. And it's going to throw people off more than anything, which is going to flag the conscious brain and make them evaluate all the prices differently than they would have otherwise. Then people might get more hung up on that strange transition, have their brain get overwhelmed, and be less likely to take any action at all. So if you pick a number in that sort of ending or a strategy for your pricing, just stick with it and keep it consistent. This is less of a concern, though, if you don't list out all your prices together or you have different segments you market to. For example, if you have some packages that are on your website that are all, say, under $1,000, but then you do in-person sessions that are in the multi-thousands, or you have packages that are at whole numbers, you can kind of play around with that, but just at the basic level, keeping consistent is always more valuable than not. So for your own peace of mind, it might be worth keeping it the same too. I mean, you could go through and test if you had one segment all ending in round numbers and one segment where they were all less and you wanted to see if they did better, but that's likely to get your brain confused and you might misquote people and it's just a bad experience. So consistency, as in so many other areas of our lives, is really key in this setup. Okay, next is the great debate of 99 versus 97 or even 95. So this would be the question of, we already answered, should you price at 500 or 499? And then now would be, once you know you're going to round down, should it be 499 or 497 or maybe 495? Unfortunately, if you do the research, go looking around, there really isn't a conclusive answer here. Nothing that would definitively say that one number is always best. In general, any of them will typically convert better than the rounded zero because of the first digit difference that I talked about already. I, of course, have an example at the end of this section about a time where you would want to use the zero, but hold on, we'll get there in a second. Okay. Because as you've heard me say many times before on many episodes, everything leading up to the pricing matters more than the number itself. I'm going to say it again. It doesn't really matter if you're 99 or 97 or 95. Pick one that you like and stick with it. One study claims that the 7 sold a little better than 9 and a lot better than 5. Some people swear by ending in 9. No one has done enough research to have a conclusive and definitive answer. And as I've said, and I'm going to get into this example in a second, the framing matters and makes a difference in which time you want to use which type of pricing or number. For me, I use 9s in my pricing. Many of my friends have 7s. Do with that what you will. The last question I get fairly often in pricing is about using totally random and sometimes interesting numbers. So this would mean instead of pricing something at 5,000 or 4,600, or even then bumping down to 4,599, you would instead price it at $4,567.89. And in case you heard that number and thought, that's a long number, you might not have realized that when you look at that number, it reads 456,789. So the reason that this could work is this is something that's more likely to make someone stop and say, what? And that can be good if you're trying to disrupt a set buying cycle. This gets into habitual buying, which is going to be the focus of an upcoming Foundations episode. But in general, 95% of purchases are considered to be habitual. And if you are the thing being bought habitually, you do not want to upset the process. So if you're the market leader or you have somebody that's consistently buying from you, you don't want to put weird numbers like that out into the world because it's going to make them shake things up. You're going to kind of buck their trend. However, if there is a very well-established or set market leader and you're trying to compete against them and get somebody to notice you, if you're new to a market or in a different space than you've been before, having a weird number, whether it's $4,567.89, or someone, when I was just in Arkansas, asked a question about pricing that was, they said they did something with photos and the pricing was $13.25, or I don't know, weird numbers, but not in a sequential setup like for the 456 one. If you're trying to, again, buck the system, that can be helpful. If you're not, it could actually do more harm than good. And that helps lead into why all of this is relevant on this number framing episode. There was a study that was done a couple years ago in the Journal of Consumer Research called "This Number Just Feels Right." And of course, there's a link in the show notes. They did some research into pricing of round numbers versus odd-ended numbers. And the study found that luxury pricing, or other things that are bought on emotion, like a bottle of champagne, sold better when they were priced at an even $40 instead of being $39.72 or $40.28, which, makes sense because essentially the discount, whether it's 99 or 97 or 72 in this case, makes your brain trigger to think it's going to be a deal. And if you're buying something that's more of a luxury item or you're buying on emotion, you want that higher quality and you don't want to have this idea of it being at a discount. Another experiment looked at pricing for a camera. In this case, one group was told that it was being purchased for a family vacation, and the other was told it was for a class project. The participants favored the rounded prices for leisure and luxury emotional purchase of a vacation, and the non-rounded prices when they thought it was for a class project, which is more functional or you're looking for a deal. Again, exactly the same camera, but in this case, the frame mattered. That's what this tells us. What is the mindset someone is in when they're going to buy from you? What do you offer? And why are they going to use your product? Are you a high-end luxury brand or trying to help people see your items as a deal? Those frames all matter more when picking your pricing than those specific numbers themselves. And this gets back to considering the ripples, which I talked about last week and on episode 8, which was on change management. To use the frame terminology, think of this as the customer's frame of reference. Where are they coming from? What matters to them? Use that to choose your price. And pick one that helps you feel confident because, as I have said in the It's Not About the Cookie series and episode 13 on mindset, confidence helps you sell and encourages people to buy. So that's your frame of reference. So picking a price you feel good about and you can say and be confident in is better than what everyone else says you should do. And similarly, understanding that frame of reference from your customer to help you feel confident in the way that you're going to present your pricing will have much more impact than going with a 7 versus a 9 for whatever arbitrary reason. Okay, enough about that. Let's move on to other statistics. You may think your business doesn't use statistics or that your clients don't care about them. But in reality, statistics and numbers are everywhere, and they can be very persuasive when presented properly, and actually very negatively persuasive when presented wrong. If you look around, you can see numbers in almost every advertisement out there. 4 out of 5 dentists agree, or kills 99.9% of germs, or 95% would recommend to a friend, or 87% of women saw results in 6 weeks, and 99% saw results in 6 months. Once you start looking for them, you're gonna see numbers everywhere. Gas mileage on the highway versus in town or versus another car, that percentage of fat versus fat-free, 100% whole grain, freshens breath 3 times better, 2 times the cleaning power. I think you get the idea. So why have you not really noticed the sheer volume of them before? It's because your subconscious brain can easily make a choice when given these number frames. This helps incorporate a few other concepts, like relativity, which was the focus of episode 12. Numbers help your brain value things and make comparisons, which you know from that episode on relativity is something your brain really likes to do. That helps it to make a decision without flagging your conscious brain. And if you remember that 99% of decisions are made subconsciously, you either make it easy on the brain so it can go with the flow, or you make it hard and shift into the conscious space, which is slow and more likely to get quickly overwhelmed. But like I said, if you're trying to disrupt the market or you're trying to interject into a habitual buying sequence, that could be worth doing. So your first step is to look for numbers in your business. You have them. And many would help people to do business with you because people like to be part of the group. I've talked briefly about herding in previous episodes, and it will have its own episode soon. And it is a big reason why framing in numbers matters. Here's an example. Let's say you're in a new city you've never visited, and you want to know where to eat dinner. How do you decide? You could just wing it, hope for the best, but most people would not be happy with that scenario. These days, you probably turn to something like Yelp. Or if you're celiac like me, it's all about Find Me Gluten-Free, which is both a website and an app. So you assume a lot of positive ratings means something. And in many cases, it helps. But what if all those people have different tastes than you? Or what if they are paid by the restaurant to give 5-star reviews? Or maybe they just have really low standards. If you're scrolling through and one restaurant has 10 5-star reviews and the other only has 1, do you assume that one is better than the other? It might not be, though. Maybe the second restaurant is brand new. Maybe the one with 10 reviews hasn't had any new reviews in the last month and they just changed owners or head chefs. The point is, you make an assumption based on the numbers you see, and it sets your expectation and primes you for the experience, which is the topic of next week's episode. This happens because of our herding mentality. We assume other people know more and better than us and simply take their word for it. Before Yelp, you might have walked down the street to find a new restaurant. And if one was full and had a line and the one next door was empty, which one would you go to? Which would you assume was better? Of course, you know this is based on nothing at all. There could be a party at the busy location, and maybe the other one just opened a minute earlier and it's going to have a huge line later on. Statistics like this work because people want to be like everyone else. Not in every way, but in many ways we do. You know, I'm all for uniqueness. I get it. We're all our own people. But as a species, we are conditioned to go with the herd. It's very deeply ingrained in who we are. It's about safety. It's about protecting ourselves. I've talked about this before. And again, herding will have its own episode. But trust me, this is why this works. So, when should you use each type of number? The answer is, of course, It depends. And as with so many things I talk about on the podcast, it's a good idea to test for yourself. Try to flip and shift in as many ways as possible to see what sounds best and consider why something sounds better from one frame than another. And hint, hint, there's a free worksheet on the website at thebrainybusiness.com/17 to help you with this. Here's an example for you. I was at a mastermind a few months back, Biz Chicks shout out again. And in that group, I was talking about this topic, the power of numbers. I made an example of a statistic on the spot. I made it up as something to showcase what someone would want to look for in their own numbers. I said something like 87% of our customers renew their contracts, or 87% of people would refer us to another friend or family member. Someone followed up with me after the mastermind to ask about how she set this up in her business. So she did the work. She went and looked and found some of her own numbers and came back and said she was going to use this statistic of 78% of customers get additional services. And I responded that she should change that to instead be 4 out of 5 customers get additional services. If you're anything like her, you might be wondering why I recommended the percentage for one and the out of for the other. So here's what I told her. 87% is a high percentage. It would round up to 90 easily, which is basically 100. The brain sees it as high, but 78% would only round up to 80, which sounds much lower. And 78% could be attributed to grades in many minds, which is a C and possibly close to failing depending on your school. It just has negative connotations in the brain. You could also present the number as 8 out of 10, but with any fraction, you want to round down to the lowest possible denominator, which leaves you with 4 out of 5, which sounds much better than 78% or even 80%, even though it's exactly the same thing. There are many ways to present information in your business. For example, over half sounds better than 51%. And you don't have to stay within the strict realm of numbers. For example, most sounds better than 60%. And remember, the frame can also be flipped the other way. Consider the opposite side of each statement, because even though the subconscious might gloss over it, it might also dig in and try to figure out what is being said. For example, saying 87% of women saw results means that 13% didn't. And what about sales that are up to 75% off? That can draw you in. We want a deal, and your brain assumes it's a great sale. I mean, why would they put that out there if it's not? But there could only be one item at 75% off, and maybe it's something terrible, and everything else is only 20% off. The frame set your expectation. As a note, most retailers and businesses do not use predatory practices like I'm referencing here while playing devil's advocate. And you definitely should not go in the predatory practices. I'm giving these extreme examples to help you to realize how often the human brain makes assumptions based on numbers and how changing them up can make a difference. So, here is your assignment. And like I said, there's a free worksheet for you to help test this out. Find a number in your business and look at all the different ways to present it. Maybe find one that's a really good number and one that is a less than stellar number and see how you can showcase it differently. Which way does it sound best? Which sounds terrible? Does your customer's frame of reference influence how they would interpret the numbers in any given presentation? Try decimals and percentages and fractions and verbal expressions. Flip each one and see what the flip side would say. And then experiment to see if any of them work better than others. And let me know which works best for you. I'm really excited to hear how you use this in your business. Again, that free worksheet to help you go through that yourself is on the newly revamped website at thebrainybusiness.com/17. And if you would like some help coming up with ways to best use framing in your business, let's have a strategy session. Whether you already have a message in mind or some ads, a brochure, a web page you've been running and you want to know how to make it better, or you're not sure where to start, I can help. Schedule your free consult at thebrainybusiness.com and click on Work With Me. You can pick a time that works for you and we'll have a quick chat to see if we're a fit. Based on your unique circumstances, I'll put together a custom plan to work through your project. And if you're not sure what it would look or sound like, revisit episode 10, which is an on-air strategy session. And you can see it's super easy. We just have a conversation and you don't even have to take notes because I send you a video of the session once we're done so you can keep and use all the tips that you get in our session and apply them in any aspect of your business that you want. Again, as I've said in episode 4, questions and answers, there are no bad questions. And even having I'm not really sure what to start, but this is what I want to achieve is going to lead to a fantastic and amazing conversation. That is where we can really unlock a lot of the secrets, where if you're not trying to put out a fire, it's sometimes the best time to be looking at ways that you can be improving. When everything's going pretty well and you just want to sit down and say, how could I do better? Or take a look at this. Let me know what I could be doing differently. Or how could we incorporate behavioral economics here? I know that you don't necessarily know where it could go in and what concept it would be. And you don't need to. There's no reason. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help you with that. So if you have any area of your business where you've thought, man, I wish I could be better at converting, or I wish that more of the people that reached out to me to start a call ended up getting a final booking, or I wish that more of the leads on my website were going to click on something, or whatever it happens to be, more ads converting, wanting to know if your social profiles are conveying your brand properly in the brain of the consumers that you're trying to market to. Whatever it is, any of those questions you've thought of, I can help you to understand what you're doing right, what you could tweak to make it better, and a really huge impact you can have. I recently had a client of mine. We worked together on launching a new checking account for them. They're a credit union. And in this launch, it's a small tweak to one they were doing before, but it's actually a really great new product that they're offering, and they still have the old one. And since the launch, which was back in July, they have been opening 60% more accounts month over month based on the reframing suggestions that I provided to them. In this case, it's one that offers interest rate on a checking account. And so instead of saying that and I can't even remember, it was 2.15 or something percent interest on up to $25,000, which you hear that and think, oh, I don't know what that means. Your brain doesn't process those numbers very well. But what I recommended for them in using behavioral economics more effectively was to instead say, did your checking account pay you $315 last year? That's a question that's really easy for you to answer. And for most people, the answer would be no. And then you could say, how can I get that? And it's by going to this particular credit union, which is actually called Coast Hills Credit Union there in California. And so I know I have a lot of listeners there, so give them a look up and see maybe they're going to be a great fit for you. Whatever your business, whatever you do, definitely I can help, and I can help you to have a big impact with some small tweaks. Again, before we wrap up the episode, I just want to thank you for listening. I know you have a lot of choices when it comes to podcasts, and beyond that, you could choose to binge on Netflix or listen to music. So I'm honored that you've chosen to spend your valuable time with me. Many listeners have told me they listen while at the gym or going for a run or getting ready in the morning or driving. Whenever you listen, thank you for making me part of your routine. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you for listening and subscribing. If you've not yet subscribed, make sure to do that in the podcast app you're listening from so you can get all the episodes automatically downloaded right onto your phone. It makes it super easy and ensures you never miss a thing. And if you're listening on YouTube, new and exciting, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you get all the new episodes there, as well as other exclusive content right when it comes out. So if you listen to the podcast, you could also subscribe to the YouTube channel because there will be videos and tips there that will not be necessarily in podcast episodes. Finally, do you know somebody who could use the information in this episode? If so, I would love if you shared it with them. It's super easy to do. You can either copy the link from the app you're listening to and then text or email it to them, or simply send them a link, thebrainybusiness.com/17. Thanks in advance for helping to spread the word. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure they will too. All right. With that, this episode on unlocking the secrets of numbers and taking framing that step further is a wrap. As you heard, next week, episode 18 is back to behavioral economics foundations. We're going to be talking about priming. You won't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Melina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.